Hello, welcome to the Draft Talk podcast. We're back talking all things NFL draft, and it is flying fastly towards us as we record. The combine's kicking off, which is another big red flag marker. The draft season is well and truly underway. So let's get cracking with another top five. We are on offense today. We're going to do the tight ends. So yeah, before we get going, I'm Brian, your host, and joining me as ever is your legends, Owen and Stu. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, very good, Brian. Where else would I rather be talking tight ends with you guys? That it's right in the time of year where we're talking about things that we want to talk about, and it's great fun. And yeah, hopefully you'll be interested to hear what we have to say about quite an intriguing group.
Yeah, it's a really deep. We're talking about a record number of tight ends invited to the 2026 NFL Combine. So there's lots of players to get through. It's just really difficult to rank them. There's a lot of role style players, so it's a deep class. That is kind of a guy at the top that everyone recognizes the name, and then just a bunch of guys who are going to go kind of late day two, early day three. And once one goes, they're going to rattle off. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we take these.
Good stuff. Yeah, I was playing Titans as well. It's always good to sort of look back on because they take a couple of years to develop in the
Yeah.
NFL. So, yes, it should be exciting. So, yes, the guys have put together their top five. They've watched the film, they've read everything you need to read, they've seen everything you need to see, and they put them in a lovely order for us. Owen, I'll let you start us this week. Who's your number five in
Yeah,
this
so
year's tight end class?
we'll see if it's a lovely order. I can't say I'm so convinced because it's one of those classes where it's really difficult to have conviction in any of them outside of maybe a couple, where you just think there's plenty of really good players in this class. It's just so difficult to rank them when you're not basing it in a system or a scheme or knowing what you want. There's going to be a lot of complementary players in here. Whereas if you know you need a like an athletic F or you need a complete Y, like there's lots of it depends. So it's really difficult to stack them, not knowing. I think teams will have a better idea of this tight end class than anyone else actually, because it really just depends what you want. But at number five, I've gone with Georgia's Oscar Delp, who is kind of that hybrid type player, but he's got really good vertical seam upside and a rotational inline player. Hasn't been particularly productive at Georgia, but we'll get into that. But yeah, he's a gifted athlete, long strider, and has real vertical and after the catch upside. And upside is going to be the word that I keep on going back to with Oscar Delp, because he projects as one of those traitsy tight ends whose NFL value should be much higher than the value that he brought in college, whether that's with his blocking consistency or the receiving volume, which he'll need to increase at the next level, because in 2025, only 20 receptions for 261 yards. And in 2024, similar 21 catches for 243 yards, but really good after the catchability, 7.8 yards per reception after contact. Only one drop in 2025, which obviously, considering he only had 20 receptions, you can take that with a bit of a grain of salt, but you like what you see. But yeah, toolsy pass catching tight end with yak acceleration in flashes, but has a presence as a blocker, so you're going to be able to play him in line. Is competitive, and you're able to bank on that athleticism to get him upside and get him through the chains as a pass catcher. And tight ends is one of those positions where historically if you're going to bet on an athlete, then tight end is one of the positions that you can do that because of the receiving upside. And he's one of those players in this class, which there isn't many, that are able to combine really good athleticism, really flashy yak ability, and the ability to play in line, where there's a lot of players that you maybe fancy more as big slot options. Weaknesses, there's absolutely no doubt he's a project. It's not necessarily the lack of production, but it's the lack of usage in that Georgia scheme, which I don't particularly think was his fault. It's just that's what the scheme was, so that he doesn't have the sample size, and he's most definitely a project. His blocking consistency will always get better. You could say that with anyone, and his anchor strength and power to displace defensive ends isn't necessarily where you'd want it to be at 6'5", 245 pounds. But he's got really good detail and tempo to his routes, and I think he has really big upside once he gets to the NFL, and he will be a better pro than he was a college player.
I think we can often say that about tight ends. So some of these tight end guys who maybe aren't the most productive in college, but when they get to NFL level, you think, well, where did this guy come from? Given that bit of time and technical expertise, a bit more specialist coaching and a bit of time without having to be on the field. I think we're going to be wild on these tight end rankings, if I'm honest. I had him as tight end 8.
Yeah.
But from 3 through to that, what are we stacking? I would put them all kind of in the same bucket.
100%.
I think he's someone who runs really crisp routes. He's got good field awareness. He's reliable. He's played a heavy snap count, although he's not had that much receptions. He's been on the field a lot. He has occasionally played outside receiver, but he plays between that kind of inline and H back. He's quicker than you think he is. He's got a reasonable turn of pace. His production, is not there, but again, that is very scheme dependent, I think, rather than player dependent. His run blocking was a concern for me. I think he's not the strongest, and he doesn't. I'm not sure that there's much more to put onto that frame. His technique is not great, and defensive linemen will consistently move him around in the run game. Although he's got a good turn of pace as well, as I spoke about, he doesn't have breakaway speed. But there's a small sample size there. I don't think we've got a full rounded picture of the player. So we'll see what happens with him. I don't really know. Again, with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, but again, we're not setting the scene. We're not talking about these guys as going in the NFL and being a tight end 1 straight away. No. We're talking about players who that could potentially take their time, but will play a role. And I certainly think that there's a role with high upside with Oscar Delp, which is why he got ahead of some players who I think are really good, but sometimes you just want to have something to keep you interested, and something to bank on, and athleticism normally is that with tight end, and you see teams do that all the time, especially in on day 2, is they'll go for tight ends who have athletic upside, even though production and age tends to be more of a factor with tight ends. The tight ends who are productive in college tend to be productive in the NFL, but you like that athleticism with Oscar Delp, and you're kind of banking on someone being able to unlock something more with him.
Indeed, thank you. Stu, who's your number 5 then?
My number 5, without any conviction whatsoever, is Jack Endries, a tight end from Texas. So he is someone who had a couple of years at Berkeley before he moved over to Texas. He kind of developed and did really well there and kind of outgrew that program, and he moved over to the Longhorns. He is reasonably athletic. He's not going to be the most athletic guy that you see, but he understands zone coverage really well, and he gives a quarterback a really good option in those tight windows. His football intelligence is really good, and he can move and adjust his routes really well. Again, he's versatile. He's aligned up in the various kind of areas over the field. He contributes well as a pass blocker, but his technique's not the best in the world at all. But I think he's got a really good hand-eye coordination, a good catch radius, can moves the ball well in congested traffic areas. I don't think there's anything outstandingly elite there, but I think he's going to be one of these go-to options, finds the soft areas, and a nice option for a third or fourth passing option because he gets himself free a lot, and he will be handy for a quarterback to have on the field in passing downs.
Yeah, I had him down at tight end 9, and that's not a knock on him. You summed it well, that there isn't necessarily a trait there for you to hang your hand, that he's got really good IQ, and I feel like he could take on a real high volume as a target and in a pro-style system. But I didn't think he was a particularly great athlete at all. I think he lacked explosive burst off the line as both a blocker and a receiver, and really had limited yards after the catch creation. That he was able to gain yards when they were available, but he rarely was creative with the ball in hand. And I therefore I don't think he's necessarily as much of a mismatch in the passing game with some of these guys, and I don't think the blocking was good enough to mitigate that and kind of even it out in terms of ranking. But that doesn't mean that I don't like the player. It just meant that other players ranked slightly ahead of him for me, simply because of the balance of run blocking to receiving option.
Okay, talking of other players ranked ahead, who have you got for number 4?
I've got Justin Joly from NC State, who is a productive, big framed tight end who uses that size to win, positions himself brilliantly, and has excellent red zone instincts. So I think he projects as someone you can create mismatched targets with, who's athletic enough and has a good ceiling there, and is consistent enough as a blocker to really feel comfortable putting him on the field. Say that reliable volume, capable receiving presence that he has, along with the red zone target and frame discipline and functional, but slightly inconsistent blocking, but it's functional and he can get there. And his game is built around creating leverage with his body, with his frame, and then using the explosive traits that he's able to understand spacing in short areas through traffic, especially in the red zone, which I said where the area condenses. He's able to fend off defenders as a pass catcher, where he's able to kind of shield himself and pluck the ball away using his frame. And then you've got that kind of the catch reliability and the wingspan to be able to do that. And so I think he can create mismatches. He's going to be a chain mover. He's physical, he's competitive. He maybe doesn't have the top end speed that you want, and there's certainly a lack of explosiveness at times, more suddenness than explosiveness, actually, I would say, and there's maybe an inconsistency with his pad level. But in terms of his production, his stats dropped slightly in 2025, and he was used slightly more in the slot than he had previously. He took 24% of his snaps in the slot in 2025, and that was down at 13% in 2024, where he had a more productive year. So that maybe offsets some of that in terms of the usage. But I think you see the multi-sport athlete development there from when he was at UConn, and then he's gone to NC State. That I think he's emerged as a really productive tight end who I think has the frame, athleticism, and production that I feel comfortable putting in a rotation.
Yeah, you can see with him that he kind of came to UConn as that kind of somewhere between a receiver and a tight end, wasn't he? He's got that kind of receiving ability. He's really good at the catch point. He kind of boxes players out really well. He's got quite good hip flexibility and footwork against defensive backs. He runs angrier with the ball than you'd expect for somebody of his stature. He's not the biggest, strongest tight end, but he will battle through contact.
Yeah.
He's decisive, and he's strong yards after contact as well.
Yeah, strong is just a bit strong is the word, because it's the numbers don't back it up. It's only 3.6 yards after contact per attempt, but that's because he battles through contact rather than creating his own space.
Yeah, I think he's got really good release packages at the line of scrimmage as well. That's maybe why he's played at the slots, because he is able to do that kind of receiver type moves. As run blocking, he's a bit of a lunger. For me, again, thinking of my obsession with blocking and offensive linemen, his pad level is very high, and he does defenders get under him very easily. I think his speed vertically could limit him against some of the safeties. Again, player did really like. I had him at tight end 6, so yeah. We're not miles off here, but it's just
he's not necessarily a player that see the weakness is you can mitigate it, right? Because I'm not necessarily wanting him to run past safeties all the time. I'm more than happy giving the ball in intermediate areas and using him as a red zone threat. So you can mitigate that in terms of that extra gear that he has. It might not necessarily matter depending on who he's in a room with.
Good stuff. And let's have your number 3.
Oh, right, okay.
Actually, no.
I was going to say,
he's throwing
something spicy was about to happen.
When he does that, you worry what's coming next.
No. I've tried to colour code it, and I've just complicated myself out of it. Come on, Brian. You've got one job. Come on.
Spreadsheet master, come on.
We'll come to your three next. All right. But
Okay,
first,
I'll be prepared.
we'll have
I'm ready.
We'll have Stu's number 4, please.
Yeah, so number 4 for me is Joe Royer from Cincinnati. He is someone who originally began his career at Ohio State before returning back home to Cincinnati. 2024 was his real kind of breakout year there, and he broke the record for tight end catches of Mr. Taylor Swift for the Bearcats that year. He's somebody who's got really good body control and spatial awareness. And he's got a kind of natural fluidity for his size as well. Really good soft hands with a big catch radius. On the kind of intermediate routes, he's got good kind of head fakes, and he creates a little bit of separation from the linebackers. He's got a nasty competitive streak, and he really works hard for those extra yards. Really good at finding spots in coverage. His athletic testing, I think he'll be pretty good as well. He's got a 4.65 timed 40. We'll see what the combine might bring for that. If these kind of things. Still developing as a blocker, but he is better than some of those in this class. His functional strength, particularly in the lower body, anchoring against edge defenders, is something he maybe needs to work on. And he's sometimes a little bit rounded in his rather than cutting in on his routes. But I think he's more than strong enough, more than ample enough to play at the next level.
Yeah, that he projects as one. He's just going to be a really reliable tight end too for a long time in the NFL. And he was really good in 2025. His stats dropped slightly, but he's 8.9 yards after contact per attempt, no drops, 0.92 EPA per target, which is really strong for a tight end. He's a player. I had him at 6, and he's a player that I really struggled with not fitting in. I'll be completely honest with you that I could have had him at 3 easy enough. I really liked what I saw from him because he's just such a dependable, mature tight end who's production.
He just knows what he's doing. You can just tell he goes on the field, knows his role, knows how to play it, and I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, I do. The reason why I ended up putting the other two ahead of him was simply that I don't know whether he is what he is. That whether he has already reached his ceiling in terms of what can he be, and I'm more than happy with what he is going to the NFL, but I'm not sure he necessarily has the highest of ceilings because while his YAC numbers were really good in 2025, I think over the year, I think that's maybe just functional rather than dynamic in terms of I don't think he rarely creates yardage by making defenders miss. And I don't think he's necessarily a massively explosive separation threat, but as an all-round tight end, that I really, really like Joe Royer.
Yeah, I think it's, again, this discussion about potential over what someone is, isn't it? It's, and we've talked about it a lot in this draft, particularly with some of the older prospects we actually know what you're going to get versus some of these younger guys. Well, they could be better, but we don't know. And I guess there'll be that conversations had in GM rooms as well. It's in scouting departments. We know what we're getting versus what we could get, and it's always that age-old debate. But I think it seems to be more prevalent this year for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think age comes into it a lot as well. That kind of some players who aren't necessarily projects that they're coming into the NFL ready, especially a tight end where they're ready to take. They're balanced already. They've already executed. They've got the production. Yes, they might have to adjust the schemes, but you have more of a picture of what they are as a player. Whereas receiver, for instance, they do tend to be younger coming out, and a lot of the defensive players, they're younger, so you do have to project. I don't think there's necessarily so much projection in this class, actually, that you're pretty happy with what a lot of these players already are.
I think there's probably a combination of a couple of things, and it's probably NIL money. People are staying in college longer, and we're getting to the end of that extra COVID years now. I think that's almost done. So there might be a bit of a rebalancing in the next couple of years coming.
Well, we say that, but players can just go to court and say, I want an extra year, and apparently get one.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see indeed. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, he's finally Orion's number 3, please.
Yeah, I've gone with Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt at number 3. Who I've really struggled with, I'll be completely honest with you, because I like what he is as a player, but there are some big concerns on his tape. So he's a player that I have moved around in my rankings quite a lot. Be at 6'4", 235 pounds, an explosive receiving tight end who is a legitimate mismatch with his speed, proven production, and I think he has high impact as a flex weapon who will probably predominantly have to play as a big slot type player whose value really comes in that passing game, where he's going to be able to overcome scheme and block it, and his blocking limitations, because there are significant limitations with his blocking. As an athlete, he's a true separator at the position. Say that proven volume. He's detached from the line as a weapon. And he's going to have limited inline viability, but say as that big slot, wins with athleticism, is really intelligent in his routes, and as a receiver, really strong spatial awareness, and has an understanding for spacing and how coverage works, that his kind of archetype is going to be that detached receiving specialist, which is why I struggled with him so much, because he really just is a receiver at that point, and that's his knock. Is he just going to be an F, or is he basically just a big slot receiver? Well, if he is, then that limits him getting on the field in all 3 downs and how you're going to use him. Because I think you rarely want him playing in line. That his inline blocking is low. He really struggles to anchor against defensive ends and bigger defensive players. His pad level rises consistently, where he's just able to be forklifted, and it just doesn't have the functional play strength as a blocker to sustain a role at the moment in the NFL doing that. But you talk about traits to hang your hat on. You know, he's a known commodity as a receiver. The athleticism special, the production. The production's real. He was ranked second amongst tight ends in receptions with 62, and was the top in receiving yards amongst tight ends with 769. This season just gone, was used in the slot 25% of the time. Does have drops, is 5 drops in 2025, which isn't necessarily concerning, because I feel like I know what he is as a receiver, and he has the ball skills, he has the ball tracking, he's a threat within his routes, and he's got the explosive release packages, and I think he's going to be one of those quarterback best friend tight ends, but I just don't want him blocking, and I do wonder what that means for your projection in the NFL. But the NFL seems to be, he's special in one area, and while I don't want him play down or overlook those blocking deficiencies, that what he can offer you as an offensive weapon just means he grades out higher for me. But there's no doubt I have concerns. Is the mute button for the first time this episode?
Haven't started speaking yet. We're all right.
Okay.
Eli Stowers is never going to be mistaken for an offensive lineman playing the tight end position.
Yeah.
He is not. That is not his game. But athletically, he's probably one of the more gifted tight ends in this class. He's going to jump off the screen. Literally, when you're watching the testing, he's going to be a huge broad jump. He's going to have a massive.
He's one one of the players. We're recording this before the combine, so we're talking. We've recorded this a few days before the episode's actually been released, and he's one of the players who I thought, we should have waited, because
Yeah, I mean, he's number 2 for me.
Yeah.
I really like him. I think he's got everything as a receiving tight end that you want. He's got legit speed up the seam. He's got really natural hands as a catcher. He creates separation with sudden breaks. He's got really good twitch for someone his size. He's dangerous after the catch. He can pluck high balls out of the air. You do not want him against defensive ends if you can avoid that by any stretch of the imagination. And his play strength, it's not the best. But with a lot of teams, we've seen it particularly with the likes of the Rams, playing 12, even 13 personnel, at times as well. There is a role for someone like him to be a receiving weapon, and I think that receiving ability is too good to ignore.
Yeah.
And for me, I had him as number 2.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's too hard to ignore. But I do wonder, I suppose, I was started watching and thinking, are you just a big slot receiver and not a tight end. And I caveat with it, I am very worried about that. So that's a real possibility when we get to the next level.
Time will tell. Stu, let's have your number 3 then, please.
So my number 3 is tight end Max Klare from Ohio State. Owen's nodding. I think he might have him
3
very similarly, but
we've swapped those two.
We've swapped those two. Yeah. So he is a really smooth routes runner rather than, I think, completely explosive. But he's got deceptive acceleration. He's got really good sticky hands. He's a threat after the catch. He's got a bit more juice than I thought he was going to have with the ball in his hands. I like the way he sinks down just into those soft zones, those windows in the middle of the field. And he's often a really good, clean target for his quarterback. Very good at the high point in the ball as well. Intelligent. You can move him around. He's a really good red zone weapon. He times his jumps really well to get over up the top of defensive backs to pluck the ball out of the air. So I think he could score quite a few touchdowns when he's on the field. You want to be looking at him in the red zone. Pad level, again, we're speaking about it, tight ends can be a little bit high at times. There is some issues with his kind of play strength that, with blocking, but I think he's willing, and he does use the right technique. He just sometimes is a little bit grabby, but I think that's just something he's going to learn. Just an all-round good tight end. I think he's a really reliable tight end, and I think that if you've got him at 2, I'm not going to argue that one at all.
Yeah, I do have him at 2. What I like from Max Klare is I've seen him do it all. That I've seen him be competent as a blocker and playing in line, and then at Purdue in 2024 he took 26% of his snaps out of the slot and was just the focal point of that offense. So I feel like I'm comfortable putting Max Klare in almost any situation because he's been the high volume target, say the offensive weapon while he was at Purdue, and everything. The whole offense went through him, which is why Ohio State came calling for him to go there. But then he's had to take that kind of secondary role at Ohio State when the ball's being shared out with all those receivers. But that means that his name had died down a bit. But what I saw was a well-rounded, assignment sound tight end who's proven he can take that receiving volume when asked to, but also be a dependable inline blocker when he needs to as well. So that means he's going to be a reliable 3-down contributor at the next level if a team wants to use him that way because of the balanced skill set with the legitimate weapons, proven volume, technically sound almost in all areas. That his yak maybe isn't the best. It's functional rather than just being electric, which I think is absolutely fine at 6'5", 243 pounds. And I don't think he necessarily stresses safeties vertically, but again, I don't really have a problem with that at tight end because rarely are they used in that way. That yes, you want to get them vertically up the seam, but we're not talking 30-40 yards downfield on a regular basis, so you can mitigate that, and I'm sure you'll deal with it absolutely fine. But yeah, his spatial awareness, especially against zone, reliability as a route runner in terms of being able to win up the seam and with digs and crosses. His catch mechanisms, he plucks the ball out there cleanly. Dependable on 3rd down because he's got that blocking ability as well. You don't have to take him out the lineup, and while he's not a mauler by any stretch, I think he is able to hold his ground reasonably enough against power, and shows the ability to re-anchor as a counter when needed, and certainly has the effort. So yeah, I actually really liked what I saw from Max Klare, and he'll probably grade out higher for me than he will for a lot of other analysts.
Nice. Okay. We've got one left. Wayne, who's do the big reveal.
It's Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon, and I'll be honest, I maybe feel more comfortable with Max Klare's projection at not 2 than I do with Kenyon Sadiq's, but the athleticism and the kind of enticing traits that Kenyon Sadiq has just lure you in because he's an explosive, space-eating, movable tight end who can stress defensive vertically, he can run any route, and he has the speed to get vertically when other players don't in this class. He's a real mismatch and causes conflict with defensive backs because of everything he offers. His projection, though, hinges on whether he can become a 3-down player or not. If you don't think he can become a 3-down player, he's not a first-round player for you. So it really depends on what you think he can do, because you maybe haven't seen it all. He's a seam stretcher as an athlete. He forces linebackers to turn and run. He's dynamic in space, has real catch-and-go acceleration, but still developing as an inline Y. His power and his sustaining of blocks, it isn't great. And I think while he's the only tight end in this class who has a realistic round one pathway and the upside is legitimate, his production doesn't necessarily justify that round one valuation, and that means he's going to be more of a projection than completely foolproof right now. But he has that high upside traits that you want to bet on if you're making a tight end pick in the first round, because of that vertical acceleration, the separation speed, fluid transitions at 6'3", 245 pounds, alignment versatile as well. While you don't really want him as an inline blocker right now, that he rarely wastes motion in his versatility in the alignments as a receiver. And he can occasionally line up in line, but I don't think you want him blocking. It's more of a decoy, and his ball tracking is exceptional. Stats: 560 receiving yards from 51 receptions, 8 touchdowns, led the position group in 2025, 6 drops, which is slightly concerning, and 4.9 yards after contact per attempt isn't the best in this class, but I think you can maybe mitigate that a little bit. 17% slot usage. So he was moved around, but I think he is going to be one of those vertical seam stressors, and a team's going to have to have a plan to unlock that athleticism even further when he gets to the NFL.
Yeah, he's also number one for me. I think that's no surprise. However, he does kind of go a little bit against what I normally go for. Of the two of us, Owain is definitely more the projection guy. But
I'm trying not to be this year. I'm trying to be better.
Well, we're maybe meeting somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I've gone a bit more flyers than I might have done previously. I don't think he's a flyer, though. I think the combine will be really interesting for him, because if he absolutely blazes, he's going to go really high. If he runs a bit slower than is projected, that might just raise the question marks. Well, what have we got in Kenyon Sadiq? Because he does rely an awful lot on that athleticism and that speed. He features multiple roles because you can attack linebackers, getting them turned. He's big enough to dominate safeties and those nickel defenders. He's quick enough to stress them as well. Really, really good receiver, tracks the ball well. He can separate the top of his routes, accelerates after the catch. Red zone threat as well. He can go up and get the ball there. It's, again, we're looking at players who are not the full rounded package. We've talked about it on the running back episode about role players. I think he's a bit more than that, but he definitely needs to work on his blocking ability and his physical style. I think you need to, if you want to get him on 3 downs, he does need to up that play strength and show what he can offer there. But I think, if there's going to be a tight end that goes in the first round, I'm not 100% sure yet, but
I'm not either.
I think in this draft where he's just a good player, let's just draft him, rather than waiting, because there is not maybe the high end class. I think he's certainly got the shot out of anyone to go round one, and for me he is still the number one tight end in the class. But again, just some question marks lingering.
Yeah, like you said, with role players, I mean, the whole draft is just stacked with role players. With whether that's the next episode which we record should be on linebackers. There's plenty of role players in that as well. It's just up and down. There's the projections and the rankings are going to be wildly different, I think, when we actually get to draft, especially on day 2, because it's all going to depend on who fits what scheme and where teams are in their team building to where they fit in. I'll be honest, I'm not sure I would be comfortable using a first round pick on Kenyon Sadiq, but maybe in this draft a team thinks that that outweighs the talent on the board.
I think generally late round 2, early round 3 is where we're going to see a bit of tight end action. You know, if you're a tight end fan, that would be the time to tune into the draft, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those where someone goes, right, Max Clare's gone, Eli Stowers is gone, then all of a sudden you're going to see a run of teams going, right, well, this is where we have to take our tight end. Teams will hold on going, they'll get to their second round pick and think, well, they're all still on the board, we'll wait till the third, and all of a sudden you're just going to see a run of tight ends come off the board as teams think, right, we need to get them quickly. But say it's deep, 27 of them at the combine. There's going to be plenty of depth on day 3 as well, where you can pick up a couple to satisfy your need.
Lovely stuff. Well, exciting. Excited for this, just a draft in general. Yeah, there we go. We've run on tight ends. Should have some sort of Imodian joke to hand. I haven't. That's the best I can do. But yeah, before we go, guys, remind everybody of your top 5s there, please.
Yeah, so at 5, I've got Oscar Delp from Georgia. 4 was Justin Joly from NC State. 3, Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt. 2, Max Klare, Ohio State. And Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon at 1.
At 5 was Texas Longhorns Jack Endries. At number 4 was Joe Royer from Cincinnati. Max Klare from Ohio State at 3. Vanderbilt Eli Stowers at 2. And also Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon at 1.
Good stuff. Okay, as let you know, the linebackers will be coming next. We've done plenty of positions before this. If you've not yet, do check them out. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled. We'll be back with another episode of the Draft Talk podcast. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Thank you very much for listening.